In honor of our many young guests this morning, I'd like to start a little bit differently than I initially had planned. Maybe move into a new modality for us, a wiggle break. Okay? So, I invite everybody who wants to get up and just wiggle it out for a little bit. Everybody's got wiggles? Everybody needs their wiggles out? Excellent. Thank you to our young guests for the inspiration to wiggle together this morning. My first Sunday as senior leader of the Washington Ethical Society was August 14th, 2022. Today is August 20th, 2023, and so we have made it a year. I closed my first platform here by reminding those gathered that this community, life, the world, is an art project, and that I'm a witch. These things are still true. This is still an art project, and though I spend a lot of time with a book called Godless Paganism these days, I am still a witch. Our first year together has been a lot about choosing each other. And as I think about what it has meant to be choosing each other, I realize that that's not just the project of a first year, or a second year, or a third year, or a fifth year, or a 10th year. Me put out there the hope of a 10th year. Choosing each other is the project of community. It is the project of being together. It is perhaps one of the greater projects of ethical culture. Choosing each other is hard. Choosing each other is really hard when we try to do it in a way that is truly as inclusive as we want to be. We don't always speak the same language. We don't always have the context for one another's experiences. And it is really hard to slow down and experience people as they are instead of as we assume they are. We've made a lot of good progress in this year. We have miscommunicated and fixed our miscommunications. We have had little bubbling up of issues of conflict and found ways to live through conflict, to turn conflict into an opportunity to learn from one another. We're still very much figuring out what it looks like to be together, not just me with the people who come here on Sunday, not just the people who've been coming here with the new people, but all of us, because for a few years, together didn't look the same. So it's different to come to a building and be together. It's different to figure out what it's like to be together meaningfully across distance, to make it so that when we're sick, we don't have to miss our community. Or if you wake up on Sunday and, oh no, it's 10:25, that's okay. You don't have to figure out how to get your body to a building to participate. You can join us virtually. We're still working on the details of how we could make that as good and integrated as possible, but we make steps all the time. We learn more and more about how to do this thing together in the world that we live in, instead of the world we imagined before or the world that we dream of ahead, right? We can remember what was and dream about what's gonna be and live here in right now all the same. In the last year that we spent together, we did some really hard things. We passed a really hard budget. We elected some new officers. We figured out how to make Sunday happen. This is more of a challenge than I think you might understand. There are many people involved in making Sunday happen, and having a process that we can use pretty smoothly is a big victory. We've also had a lot of fun along the way. The auction is a good time. Anytime somebody makes cookies around here, for those of you who are new, if there are cookies here, you want them. Full stop. So we've had quite a year of getting to know each other, and then this was quite a summer for not just me, who went and did some studying and some traveling, but all of us who are in the world dealing with the reality of climate change, all of us who are paying any attention to what is going on in our government or in our associations, right? This is a moment where leadership is actually really important, but good leadership is pretty hard to find. This summer, the American Ethical Union, which is one of our denominational affiliations and the core of our identity here, ethical culture, well, the American Ethical Union, which is the official body for that, had its summer assembly this year, and there were a lot of big things on the table. It was a really, really hard assembly. I didn't even go, and I have a intense emotional experience of what that was like. And what's worse, or something, is that it was also really inconclusive. There were votes, but none of those votes chose a direction forward. There were some things passed, but many of them canceled others out. And what we're left with is a very large national board, a historically diverse set of officers, and no particular decision about where we're headed. This is a rough position for us to be in as a national organization, but there are places where I find hope all the same. Let me be really honest with you. My hope is not found in the now 25+ member national board of an organization with, about the same number of congregations. But this historically diverse set of officers, with President Condra Sears, a member of the Baltimore Ethical Society, a scientist who works at the University of Maryland, and notably the first Black woman elected president of the AEU, there is hope in the way Condra thinks and leads. With Vice President, the Reverend Dr. J. Exodus Hooper, who many of you have met, who is a queer, transgender person of color, a Black person, 2 Black people at the top of our national leadership. That's brand new for the AEU. And that brand new, that we could pick that, is remarkable. We have our youngest ever secretary in Anya Overman, and another officer, Anthony Cruz Pentejas, who is another person of color on that list and another queer transgender person. That's remarkable. I think that we deserve to take a second to be proud of being able to make those choices, even if it was hard for us as a group to make other choices. Can we applaud? And this actually comes as part of a bigger movement in what I will call the religious left. I'm gonna call it that for the sake of making a group. Don't hold on to that label too hard. Because the Unitarian Universalist Association also has their first elected Black woman president. We can clap about that too. The Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt is the most qualified person who has ever been president of the UUA. I feel very much allowed to say that. She is in part the most qualified person because she was once the appointed president before, and it is a one-term gig, so nobody who has ever been president before has been president again. She was president for about 4 months 5 years ago. But also because Reverend Dr. Sophia is an ethicist, is a theologian, is a scholar. Reverend Dr. Sophia knows her stuff. And in our affiliation with the UUA as well, I think Reverend Dr. Sophia's election is going to be really good for us. Not just because she lives in the area. But it's not just the UUs. There actually was a wave of Black women elected to national leadership positions in progressive religious organizations, including the United Church of Christ, the Disciples of Christ, and other mainline and liberal Christian sects. That puts us at a really interesting moment. Our first Black woman president, the UUA's first elected Black woman president. This is a really unique moment. This is a place where our history and the things that we have been saying we believe and care about really have an opportunity to become true. To become not just principles that we fight for, but principles we live into. I say this not just because these leaders are Black women and I have a bias in favor of Black women, but because I know Condra's work. I know Sophia's work. And through Sophia, I have gotten to know the work of the women who have come to be in charge of several other denominations. They are people who are engaged, who are in this to be together for real, who take their calls to leadership seriously, so seriously that they have already formed a network to support one another. But here's the thing. We all remember from our own lives between, 2008 and 2016, what happens the first time somebody who doesn't look like everybody else who's had the position gets to be in charge. We all remember how quickly, right, conservative sentiment turned into racial foment. Okay, some of us don't because some of us are children, but those of us who are not actively children probably remember what that was like. Probably remember how much of what we see on the national stage now started as an insistence that Barack Obama couldn't be a legitimate president, right? Started as a Tea Party. So I want those of us here who are committed to the thing that ethical culture can be, that WES can be, that people can be, take your pick, to be ready to support those leaders who don't look like everybody who's been in charge before. To think really hard about what it means for leadership to be held by somebody who is not like the people who have been leaders before. Those of you who have been around for the last year or the last 3 years certainly have some practice. But it's different. It'll be different because Condra is different from Sophia, is different from the rest of them. And because I, as a white queer trans person, have a different experience simply by virtue of walking around in this skin. But we've made history. We've made history. And we continue to make history. When I talk to people who have been around ethical culture for a long time, one of the things I often hear is that when they were coming up, when they were young people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, Felix Adler, founder of ethical culture, was sort of just an old uncle up on the shelf, a book in the library that you never really read. I'm really curious about why that happened. From what I hear and what I read, it sounds like Adler founded ethical culture, lived and died, and then got put on a shelf immediately in favor of a slew of other upper-class white men who came to be in charge of various ethical societies. It was kind of a fiefdom sort of situation where people had their own individual little lands to be in charge of. And though they were thinking and saying good things and interacting with each other, they were very siloed, very on their own, very focused on the thinking and teaching of one guy at any given time. It's really clear to me that looking into ethical culture history beyond that is going to be really important for us as we figure out what the ground we'll move forward on is. So, we're going to be having some guest speakers throughout the year who are more versed in ethical culture history than I am. I'm also going to do some research of my own, and we're going to spend some time digging around in what actually happened here. Not just what did so-and-so say, but why was so-and-so the one saying that, and how did people come to get power? It'll take me a little bit to do the research, but I think that it'll be fun. And if you think that it'll be fun, and I know some of you are like this, let me know. I would love to have you join me in this historical exploration. So as I've looked back over the summer, it has become clear to me that many things are true, but I'm going to go with two of them for the moment. One, that there have been some great ideas and great work done by ethical culturists over the 100-plus year history of the movement, and that even that great work was often missing parts that would have made it even more vibrant, right? You don't get to 2023 before you elect a Black woman president without having had some race problems. You don't get to, all kinds of places without having had class problems, without having had gender problems. When I first came here, I was actually surprised by the number of women who were long-term members of this community who came to me and spoke of a misogyny problem. A misogyny problem in 2022. Less surprising than you might hope. Some of the gaps that I see live in our ideas about who we are, what the group we is. Sometimes we start describing who has been around and accidentally put up a fence around who can be here. A description of WES, for example, as being made up of people who work in nonprofits and in government, leaves out a lot of people who might want to be here, a lot of people who are already here, right? We have a real opportunity here at the intersection of some great ideas and a world desperately in need of care, but we have to really, really live into those values. We have to get past our desire to fight about our favorite language, about this, that, and the other thing. Our desire to fight about this word versus that word. This is not an invitation to say words that hurt people, but we can disagree on the best language to describe systems of injustice, as long as we agree that there is injustice that needs to be attended to. We can disagree about what the best color of hair to have is, or how a person should dress. We got a lot of ideas about that. But we can agree that it doesn't matter what your hair looks like or what kind of clothes you have on. You are someone who matters. Many of us have heard the sort of supreme ethic from Adler as act to elicit the best in others and thereby yourself. But I was recently clued into another version of that phrase, which I think I like better. Act as to elicit the unique personality in others, and thereby in thyself. This version comes from the entry on Felix Adler in the Routledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy from 2001, and came to me via a conversation with Terry Smith about some things that I had said at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival panel on gender and community leadership. I had talked about how I think the core of ethical culture, the things that we can do best together, is seeing each other as whole people, is choosing to slow down enough to see a whole person in front of us, regardless of that person's skin tone, but not without acknowledgement of what that skin tone means in public, regardless of a person's gender or lack thereof, but with knowledge of what it means in our society to live that way, without judgment about somebody's presentation choices. In fact, with joy in that we can look and be so many different ways, without regard to someone's age or youth, right? But with knowledge of that the youngest and oldest of us get pushed to the side of society in actually very similar ways. We have so much opportunity right here where traditional religion continues to bleed membership at greater and greater rates, and many of those people still desire community. We have something to offer if we can just get out of our own way sometimes. If we can be willing to share with people, hey, I went somewhere on Sunday and it was really cool. Or, have you ever seen a queer trans person with green hair? Usually my hair is green. Be the person that people listen to at something that looks like a church? This is novel. Come check it out. Please feel free to use the novelty of me to bring other people in. Feel free to use the novelty of my today purple-haired wife to bring people in. Feel free to bring people in, to tell people about this place, to tell people about our commitment to seeing each other as whole people. But be ready, because those people will change this. Every single person who comes here by virtue of being a whole person will change something about this community. We will be different forever, actually, simply because so many of you arrived with your kiddos in tow today. Actually. And I am so grateful for the way that each of you has made me different already, for the opportunities to learn and grow with you. And I look forward to what we can do together. Not just what we can do in terms of activism, but definitely also that, but what we can do in terms of growing and becoming more and more alive as people. This hierarchical, dominant culture stuff that we live in tells us there is a right person to be and a wrong person to be, and situate yourself along this axis. Here, I want us to forget that. Here, I want us to say, nobody is less than a person and nobody is more than one. Everybody is somebody, and every somebody is worth coming to know more fully. That doesn't mean we'll never accidentally step on each other's toes. In fact, being close together increases the possibility of toe stepping. But that we can learn how to pay attention to our own feet, And we can learn how other people stand so that we're not inclined to step on them. That we can learn and grow, and that something other than the discordant cacophony of the public world can be true. That at least here, at least once a week, twice a week, however often you choose to be in this building, however often you choose to be with each other and with me, that whoever you are is good, that the art project of your life is worth doing, and worth doing in a way that maybe you haven't thought about before, that maybe you've been scared of before. This is still an art project, and I am still a witch. And the magic is that when we do it together, we do something more beautiful than any of us could do on our own. This is the thing that I believe more than almost any other thing. This is the thing that I know more strongly than I know, for example, even my own gender. That the thing we do together is beautiful. That the sound of children in the hall is the sound of a community that is alive and not an interruption. Thank you. Speak on it. We have so much potential here, so much good to grow on top of. So I'm looking forward to another year of doing this weird, big, messy art project with you. And I hope that you will come with me, that you will support not just my leadership, but the leadership of your fellow members who serve on the board and the LLDC and this, that, and the other committee, the tech team. The officiants, the music team and all those who choose to share their music with us, the rest of the staff, and our newly elected leaders at the American Ethical Union and the Unitarian Universalist Association. I'm going to stop talking now, but I really encourage you after platform to take a minute to talk to somebody who you maybe don't know or don't know so well. To take a moment to not just ask, hey, how have you been? But ask, what's been speaking to you lately? Or do you have a favorite piece of art? Or, wow, Casey said some real weird stuff today. Though those of you who have been around know that it gets a lot weirder. Thank you for being on this journey with me. Whether you're here just for today or you've been here for 50 years, you are an important part of everything we do here. And I am very, very thankful for you. Thank you.